Yeah, I know.
That was interesting. So,
This could be like church where we have everyone come forward.
no pressure. I kind of look at that back row.
All you people sitting in the back row.
You must break out in song next.
That's that'll be fun. Right, Terry, just give me we're running, okey doke. Good evening. Welcome to our January 6th, 2022 regular school board meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone who is here and everyone who is watching us virtually. We've made it through another year. Here we are in 2022. I would like to start by asking board members please to introduce themselves, starting with Jim. I'm looking over at you.
I saw that. I'm Jim Lothridge.
Diane Potter,
Alyssa Tracy.
Matt Marshall. Tony Veep.
Becky Fless,
Veronica Babcock,
Patrick Saucer.
Sophia Matthew, Nicole Medore, Ann Pitteroff,
Matt Willybridge.
Teresa Garat,
administrative staff.
Pat Hopkins, Superintendent,
Andrea Dish, Business Manager.
Sarah Sims, Principal of Gardner Regional Middle School,
Alicia Morris, Director of Special Services.
Christina O'Neill, Principal of Randolph Consolidated School,
Vicki Duve, Principal of Riverview Community School.
Kara Moody, Building Principal of Laura Richard School,
Katie Gould, Principal at Helen Thompson School. Angela Hardy, Director of Curriculum. And Terry McGuire, Director of Technology.
Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment for items that are not on the agenda or are on the agenda. Seeing none, we will start with old business. And that will be the Health Advisory Committee and the universal mask mandate.
yes, we made an adjustment. We thought that we would put public comment and old business together just for efficiency purposes. So there's actually a lot for me to provide, a lot of information for me to provide to you tonight. In your board folder, you will find a document that I created. It's called Superintendent Notes, January 6th. These are usually notes that I just make for myself and that I use to guide the conversation. But there's so much information in here specific to the updated SOP and recommendations from the Health Advisory Committee that I thought it would help to actually have these in writing for you so that you could walk away with something. So first of all, whenever the Health Advisory Committee meets, as you know, I provide them with current data. Most of it's pretty straightforward and it really hasn't changed. Couple of things that did change from last month that I just want to highlight, and that is the vaccination rate. Students ages 5 through 18, last time we met, it was 35 to 39%. Again, ages 5 through 18, it is now 50 to 54%. And then since the start of school, as of today, we've had, this is what's recorded on our website, that we have 163 positive cases and 28, those are, I'm sorry, 163 positive student cases and 28 positive staff cases. And that is up 58 students and 11 staff. And that's since the beginning of the year. So just that perspective. So with the superintendent's notes, what I thought I would do is to start by giving you an update on the new SOP or the updated SOP and what's required. So for anyone, student or staff who tests positive for COVID under the new guidelines, regardless of their vaccination status, they quarantine now for 5 days versus 10 days. If the individual has no symptoms or the symptoms are resolving after 5 days, they may return to school. but they must continue to wear a mask around others for 5 additional days. If after the first 5 days, the individual has a fever or other significant types of symptoms, then, and they're not resolving, then they need to remain home until they are resolving. And when they stay home, they need to stay in quarantine. Students who have one or more, students or staff who have one or more COVID-19 symptoms who have not been identified as a close contact of a positive may now come to school when symptoms are resolving, provided they have not had a fever or have used fever-reducing medicines for at least 24 hours. In the past, we required for students, they had to come back with a proof of a negative test, but that is no longer required. So that makes it easier for families. Someone who was exposed to someone with COVID. Effective now, exposures that occur outdoors in an outdoor setting or on a school bus are no longer constituted as a close contact. Thus, no quarantining is required regardless of the vaccination status. This will save a considerable amount of time from our transportation department who spent hours and hours scouring video. Close contact must quarantine for 5 days from the last COVID exposure from school and school activities, and then wear a mask for 5, that should say additional days, unless at least one of the following conditions applies. The close contact, whether it be a staff or a student, is boosted, if they're eligible for a booster. The close contact, a student or staff, if they're not eligible for a booster, but they're fully vaccinated. If the close contact has completed their second mRNA, which would be your Pfizer or your Moderna dose within 6 months, or completed their J&J vaccine within 2 months, or the close contact participates in school pool testing, or the school is enforcing a mandatory masking policy. So that is one thing that we have to talk about this evening. Because in meetings that we have recently attended this week, we have been told from DOE representatives that the mandatory masking policy has to include all school-related activities. So it would have to include athletes who are participating in sports. And right now, we have approved that students who are in play or during play don't have to wear a mask unless they are playing against a school district that has a masking policy. So right now, they already wear a mask, probably 50% of the time. So I will be making a recommendation tonight that you modify your masking policy so that we do have a universal mandatory mask mandate. By doing so, our kids will not have to quarantine. They will be able to come to school. So we will be increasing the number of in-person days for our students, which is, pretty considerable and is very impactful for students, for their learning, and also impactful for families. I will say that I attended a meeting today in which a question was raised about that mandatory mask mandate and whether it really applies to athletics or co-curricular. And there are some that feel that it may not. So when we get to the place where I ask for you to approve or expand your mandatory masking policy to include athletes, I would like a little bit of a maybe leeway that should the department come back to us and reclassify or reclarify rather that it doesn't include athletes, that I could have some flexibility to go back to the existing practice. Okay, so but we could talk a little bit more about that. Staff and students who don't fall within the exceptions of 1 through 5 above must quarantine. That doesn't apply if you make some adjustments to your mandatory masking policy. And then if you do that, then students and staff, if they only fall within exceptions 4 and 5, meaning they're not vaccinated, but they attend a school in which we have the mandatory mask mandate, then while they don't have to quarantine for school or school activities, they must quarantine outside of school per main CDC guidelines or requirements, okay? We now can also accept home test results. That's not something that we could do before. It's a local decision. And so you will be hearing that we'll be recommending that we accept positive home tests, not negative home tests, because negative home tests are impossible to verify for authenticity. But we feel like the majority of people are not going to give us a positive test result unless they really are positive. Questions on that? Those are really the big changes for the SOP. And it's my understanding as of today that some additional conversations are occurring behind the scenes with the CDC to look at additional measures that can be taken to ease the burden on school districts, maybe around close contact tracing, because that's a heavy lift for our nursing staff. So I don't know if anything will come of it, but I am pleased that there are conversations occurring behind the scenes with the CDC to see if they can do something to better support schools. So I will keep you posted as I learn more. So the Health Advisory Committee had a pretty good conversation, and I would look to the board members, Matt and Matt, who also serve on there. There was a conversation in regards to the masking, that there's a concern to keep track of who needs to keep a mask on and who doesn't if we don't have a mask mandate in place. There's also, the CDC is now recommending wearing an N95 mask in lieu of a cloth mask. So it seems that removing masks altogether doesn't make a lot of sense right now. That was a part of the discussion. Reduction of masks and our inability to socially distance the 6 feet in our classrooms and in common spaces would increase in a greater infection rate with the Omicron variant. And we want to prioritize in-person learning and safety. With the holidays and travel, the board has already agreed that we would maintain a mask mandate through the first few weeks of January. So that was just kind of a summary of their conversation. And the recommendation to the board from the Health Advisory Committee to have a universal masking mandate in place until a significant change occurs. An example of a significant change would be the positivity rates, CDC guidance, federal transportation guidance, that type of thing. Yet the Health Advisory Committee would continue to meet on the first Monday of each month to support and inform future recommendations. Then the other part of the recommendation would be to only accept positive home tests in home, at-home tests versus both the positive and the negative test results. So I would look to Matt and Matt first to see if you guys have anything else to add as members of the Health Advisory Committee.
I'll start, Matt, if you don't mind. You know, it goes back to our last meeting when we talked about the 3 foot, 6 foot issue. You know, if we don't mask, then we need to go to 6 feet in schools. Most schools, I'm not sure about the high school, but most schools can't do that effectively. They just don't have the space to do that. And frankly, I would consider making a motion tonight based on what you had just mentioned in that last paragraph, Pat, regarding barring any major changes to the CDC policy or any major changes to the positivity rates, that we potentially align board voting on the issue until after the federal transportation mandate, as far as mask mandates on buses and federal public transportation is either lifted or relooked at by the federal government, which I think is the latter part of March.
Right now, it's through the last part of March, yes.
I think it makes sense because, I mean, you know, the way, even if we voted tonight to remove masking, kids are masked on the bus, they get off, they take them off, they go into school. It'd be a good idea to align that whole thing and just, you know, not saying that the advisory committee can't come in here and give the monthly brief to the board and tell them what we talked about and all the good stuff, but I just think that I'll just say it, you know, we've really beat this mask issue to death. And our goal is to keep kids in schools 5 days a week. And I don't really think that it's going to change until certainly after the end of March and the federal government makes the decision as to what they want to do with public transportation. So I'd be willing to make that motion if that's something folks are interested in.
Do we want to have more discussion first, or do we want to, Matt, do you want to just,
Yeah,
you want to have a little bit more
I was
discussion?
just gonna say in order for that second to third, or second to last bullet to make sense was, because a couple of the nurses on the advisory committee were like, well, let's not do it 2 months, but then because they thought we wouldn't meet anymore, but we still would meet every month, you know, first Monday of the month or whatever, or the Monday before every Thursday meeting. And they were perfectly fine with that. Because they are good discussions. I mean, we were an hour and 25 minutes last Monday. And Matt and I do far less of the talking than all of the other personnel who were on there. But yeah, I would support that. I said on Monday, excuse me, I'd support that motion. I'd do it here again. But it was a good meeting with everybody, and everyone is of the same mindset, at least in the health advisory committee, that we knew early January, you know, was going to happen. And then either it might have been Sarah or someone else has said, you know, come February, we got February vacation. Who knows, kids are going to be gone for a week again. So it would make sense to go towards maybe just put off the vote until March, or, you know, if we go to April, something like that. Because overall, we had initially said that, well, let's just wait until the government lifts it, and people kind of thought, well, we don't necessarily see if they're going to lift it or not. So we didn't do that. So going until late March or whatever, or maybe the March meeting, we decide. However you want to do the phraseology of the motion, I would support that, and everyone else in the health advisory committee would support it as well.
So I would just like to add one thing. You know, we've talked about this masking mandate for months, over a year, right? So I don't think there's really anything more that we can really talk about other than if numbers start to get better, the CDC guidelines change. You know, the board, 50% of our time on the board, it's important, don't get me wrong, is spent on masking. It's something that's not going to change. And we have a lot of other work to do. We're getting into the budget time, we got things to talk about. And it's just an important time of year. And I think we just need to focus a little bit more on kids' needs outside of masking. So I just wanted to add that.
Jim?
Yeah, I have a question on the athletes. And you're saying that if we mandate, we have to, the athletes while playing a game have to mask.
Yes.
Is that part of an existing law or decision by the main CDC or by the DOE? Where is that coming from?
When the SOP was released and we began meeting with the DOE this week, for them to walk us through and explain all of the aspects of the SOP. The question was raised, what does mandatory masking, what that policy looks like? What does that mean? Explain that to us. And you were in a meeting today as well about that very same issue. That very same issue came up, and they clearly said that it is for all school activities. So if you allow your athletes to play without wearing a mask, then you don't have a mandatory mask policy in place. And so if you don't have a mandatory mask policy in place, then we can't use that as a basis for not quarantining. And we would have to continue quarantining students who are
And
close
the wiggle room
contact.
you spoke about, where is that wiggle room? Because I'm really opposed to having athletes while they're playing, particularly I'm thinking basketball players running up and down the court.
So right now, I'm told from Nate and Chad that right now our students have to wear masks. Our basketball players have to wear masks during about 50% of their games. Because we've already agreed that we would defer to visiting school districts that have a mask mandate. So they're already doing it 50%.
So they are, okay.
They're doing about 50% of the time. My question about giving me a little flexibility and leeway is that today I was in a meeting in which the question was also raised about the intent and the description of a mandatory mask policy. And a door was opened a little bit that said, well, maybe it doesn't include athletes and co-curricular, extracurricular, and there was just some pushback. Now, I haven't heard back from anyone. There's nothing official right now. All I've heard officially is that it applies to everyone and everything that we do. What I was trying to say is if I hear back that, oh, maybe their current definition is being applied more broadly, then it will be applied in the future. I just wanted a little flexibility so I could backtrack without waiting for another board meeting.
Okay, I've
If that
been in
makes sense.
favor of masking all of this time, and I voted for it each and every time.
Yeah.
I just think that when we start looking at things in such a myopic view, that we don't see any other options, it's all or nothing. And I think you get a lot more pushback from people when you're all or nothing. I don't know,
I don't disagree with you. However, if the CDC and the DOE's definition of mandatory masking policy includes everyone, then I don't feel that it's fair to families and students for a few high school students who are playing in sports to result in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, middle school students having to quarantine because we're not able to meet the definition of mandatory masking.
if we have to, then we have to, but I just think that whoever is making these particular decisions need to have a little common sense in their approach to it, but we'll do what has to be done, and I'll vote for it if we have to.
So this morning in the meeting, and Andrea, you were there, correct me if you heard it differently, the commissioner was kind of surprised that people didn't already understand that mandatory means mandatory across the board. And even Holly from the MPA said the same thing, that mandatory means mandatory across the board. And they honestly, the commissioner was a little bit flummoxed that wasn't being done. Because we don't want to, we want to eliminate any need for students to quarantine. We really mean it. Students need to be in school 5 days a week in chairs. When they're supposed to be in chairs.
Does the MPA put out any guidance?
No. Not guidance, but Holly, what is Holly?
I don't know what her position is.
But she works for the MPA. She comes now instead of Mike or Mike. And she confirmed what the commissioner was saying as far as masking means masking.
She might be like the deputy executive director. I'm not sure of her title.
Yeah, I'm not
but-
sure either. I just know she's Holly. So,
Okay.
And just to clarify, that's why it's all or nothing, because we need to know that we're all doing this as an entire unit so that we've made every effort to stop the transmission of this virus.
right.
And so that if we didn't do it, then there's that little window where it could.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay.
And they may back off of it, who knows? But the commissioner was very, Did you-
Next week?
did you feel like she was
Daily
clear?
thing.
I mean, am I?
I felt, yeah, very clear. She was, like you said, she was appalled. I wouldn't appalled that other people didn't have the same interpretation.
It seems like if there were quite a few schools that didn't require their athletes to mask. So you would think if we didn't understand that definition, that the MPA and or the Department of Education would have come right out and said, hey, we saw in the paper that your school is not requiring athletes to mask. That's not what mandatory masking means. So again, it's just like a miscommunication. I'm like you, Jim. I think it's pretty unhealthy for these athletes to be running up and down, especially, the gym with masks on. However, I've said from the beginning, kids have to be in school to learn. If this is what it takes to not have quarantining, then I will vote for the masking for athletes. I don't necessarily agree with it, but kids being in school has always been my number one priority.
I have the opportunity to watch games in California. My granddaughter, she just played in the Staples Center last week. So she's a very strong athlete. And they are not required to wear masks while playing. They do on the bench, they do walking in and out of the locker rooms, on the buses, but not while they're playing. And I don't know if that's why I asked if it's the main CDC, because obviously, if it was universal from the federal CDC, it'd be all across the country.
No, these
No.
guidelines, the SOP they're coming from the main CDC.
And I assume they're supposed to be getting some direction from the federal CDC, I would think. Or do they make
Yeah,
up their own?
so, well, no, they build theirs off of federal. So federal reduced the number of days of quarantine to 5.
Yeah.
That's why Maine has done the same thing. But some of the nuances about how it applies to school may look different in Maine than it looks in California or other places around the
Yeah,
country.
I watched the games, and now I do know that some of the students, athletes, do wear masks right through the game. It is their own choice.
Mhm.
And I support that, my own, but when anyways, I hope that will change. I really do. I think that is an overreach for the mandated masks. But I will support whatever we have to do to keep the kids at school, but I don't think wearing or not wearing a mask in an athletic event should be affecting whether or not we can keep kids in school. I just don't see it. So, thank you.
Teresa had a
I
question.
my question was going back to like the positive and negative testing. Why would we not accept a negative test?
Because a negative test can be falsified if we
Oh,
can't
okay.
prove that it's authentic.
Because I'm
So-
like, I've had negative tests. Are you saying they're not
True, but
True,
you
okay.
could take a negative
for
test,
somebody
take a
else?
photocopy or take a picture of it, send it to us when it's really right, it's yours and not someone
Perfect.
else's.
Okay.
Whereas if you do it through Walgreens or your doctor's office, there's a timestamp, where it came from, so it's authentic.
Yeah, because I've only done it through Walgreens or doctor's office. I didn't
To be
know.
clear, you mean not the kit you buy at Walgreens, you mean the pharmacy.
Correct.
So maybe we need to say that.
Well, we're just saying we're not accepting
Okay.
the
Yeah, I got you.
at home, right? It's the
Yeah.
at home testing.
Yeah,
We'll accept it for positive cases, but not for negative cases.
the only reason I muttered to Matt a minute ago, we had the opposite happen. And we were away and in 5 days we tested and one was positive and we went and got tested and it was actually negative. So,
And people can actually do that, but we will
Yeah.
accept the positive
Okay.
and work and treat them as a positive and do the quarantining and all of that.
which the timing was fine, so, but it just was a little mind boggling.
So Pat, could I have one quick question? So could you possibly walk us through a scenario? For example, if we were to decide to not require, or I don't even know if we can, but I would think we could as a group, as a board, vote that we want to keep it the way it is. If a basketball player were to acquire COVID, what would that look like? Because everybody on the bench is masked. Right? If you're not on the floor, you're masked. So how would it spread out? What would that look like as far as, I know we want to keep kids in school, but I guess my point would be, how much of an impact would it be if one of the ball players contracted COVID?
So where the impact lies is with your close contacts, not with your positive cases. So the individual who tests positive will have to quarantine for 5 days, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Everyone who is deemed now a close contact, which could be the rest of the basketball team, they would now have to quarantine because they've been identified as a close contact if they are unvaccinated. The vaccinated students don't have to quarantine, but the unvaccinated would. Whereas if we have this mandated mask policy, none of them would have to quarantine.
You have to think of it too, Matt, sorry to jump in, but like as on the flip side of that, so if we keep it the way it is and a 5-year-old in our kindergarten class is deemed a close contact and we don't have that universal mandate, they'll have to quarantine if they're not vaccinated. Whereas if we had that universal mandate for athletes, that 5-year-old, even though they're not on the court playing, that 5-year-old identified as a close contact, because that universal mandate's in place, will not need to quarantine.
So the 5-year-old, you're saying attending the game?
No, just that
Sibling
Helen
or anybody.
Thompson.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm missing something.
I know.
Maybe a sibling,
Seriously.
a sibling of,
Sibling or,
sibling cousin,
yeah.
I get it,
next door
yeah.
neighbor.
So
But it's, what is the typical is what, 15 minutes, less than 6 feet?
It is
Consistently?
15 minutes within a 24-hour period, yes.
So, but I think what's happening though, it's hard to make that link, and I think that's maybe on purpose. They're not going, the CDC, it sounds like, is not going any more granular than the district level as far as this goes. That's why it's all or nothing. And so it's applying to, you know, a kid that tests positive in kindergarten, nothing to do with the basketball game. And if the basketball kids if everybody's wearing masks, the kid that tests positive in kindergarten, nothing to do with the game. It also means that the kid who's masked there,
I get
right,
it, yeah.
can stay in school. The kid that's positive would then quarantine.
Yeah, but we're specifically talking about on-court play. We're not talking about the kid.
But it's a district policy.
Yeah, but okay.
So it doesn't, the district policy will apply to every student in the district, is what he's saying. So it really doesn't have to do specifically with basketball or athletics.
Right.
It impacts every student in the district if you don't mandate this across the board.
So we have no choice.
That's
Right.
my feeling.
Right.
I should have just cut to it.
That's why I'm here saying, I don't think we have a choice. We need to do it because you can't sacrifice every student in the district for a handful of students who are athletes.
I'm not trying to sacrifice anybody, but it's an absurd connection to get there. And somebody
think-
ought to have a brain in their head to figure out that there's something unreal about it.
They played that way last year.
No, it will change.
I have a comment and a question. Matt, it's mass punishment. We're in the military. We know all about it. Guy in another boat got a DUI, you can't drink anymore.
Oh, man, that's not fair.
What is,
That's how it works.
that's how it works.
It does seem like it.
So there's little to no chance of the MPA going out and making the caveat
Right.
to, okay.
No.
So it's like Cullen said back in August, you know, why is, you know, nothing happens until it happens at the lowest level, and certain organizations, I guess, don't have the moral courage to say it's kind of stupid for people to do mass or whatever else, because you watch the local news and kids are running up and down the court and the masks are dangling around their chin, but keep butts in seats is what we want, so.
We want butts and
Right.
seats.
And I just have a quick question. Working in medical, I think it's a HIPAA violation to ask anybody if they've had the shot.
That's another piece that I will be talking about later, federal OSHA requirements.
Right.
On mandating that employers
Ask.
access documentation verifying whether employees have been vaccinated or not. And then it's up to parents to inform us and notify us whether their children have been vaccinated. And if their children have been deemed a close contact, many of them do share that information, because if we know that they're vaccinated, they don't have to quarantine.
And I want to follow up too, real quick, because to Matt's point, right, like our hands are tied. Of course, we want the kids in the schools, that we don't want to quarantine healthy students. And before, I think our hands were tied because there was that social distance piece related to mask mandates. My understanding is that is no longer the case and is not in writing.
there's no social distance requirement related to a mask mandate, but now this wording is here. So now again, our hands are still tied because we want kids in school. And it doesn't
But
matter.
as long as you have close contact language in the
Yeah.
SOP,
Right.
then your social distancing still applies. That's where your 3 feet and your 6 feet still
So-
come into play.
I reached out to, in regards to that specifically and was told that that's no longer, that's no longer the case in relation to in relation to that. But it could, it could have been a miscommunication and misunderstanding, so I don't want that to be set in stone, but I think moving forward as the Health Advisory Committee and as we're making these decisions, we'll want to make sure that that's clear.
Well, then the state is looking at, as I said, CDC is having conversations about eliminating close contact. But if you don't have a 3 foot and a 6 foot social distancing requirement in place, then you can't do your close contact tracing,
Then you
right?
wouldn't do it
So it-
anyway, yeah.
It is in place because we're still expected to do close contact tracing. Because again, how do you do it if it's not in place? What would be the point? What would be the relevancy of it?
Yeah, I understand your
And,
point.
right,
What would be the
What would-
bar and the stick?
correct,
You know, there's gotta
but it
be-
may be going away. It may very well be going
And
away.
it's so crazy because some people don't get it. Some people that are fully vaccinated with the booster get it.
Oh, yeah, it's really.
And,
bad, yeah.
it's no rhyme or reason.
Yep.
So what I am asking tonight to kind of bring this back, because as Matt said, there were other things we want to talk about other than just masks.
And here we are
And here
again.
we are, 45 minutes into the meeting.
No.
So the things that we're asking is, one, the Health Advisory Committee, I read you their recommendations, okay? The universal masking until a significant change occurs and only positive at-home tests be accepted. So that's one motion I hope someone will make. The second one is the masking of student athletes or some sort of mandatory mask policy. If someone would make a motion regarding that, that would address the the quarantining issue with the SOP. So that's what we need, are 2 motions. If anyone is willing to make them.
Brave girl.
Which one?
I don't know.
Her is brave.
Do it.
I don't, enforcing the mandatory masking policy to include the athletes. I would make a motion that we would accept the committee's recommendations.
Okay, and I
Veronica
heard
seconded,
Veronica, okay.
Under her breath.
Matt has discussion.
Oh, yes, Matt. I'm
So
sorry.
that means that the way the motion was put forth, it happened before. You can agree with one and not agree with the other and have to vote. If you lump them both together,
No, she
No,
only did the
she did
athletes.
just the athletes.
no, I thought you had said that, I thought you had said to continue mask mandate and include the masking for athletes. I thought it was a 2-pronged thing. Did I
I
not hear it right?
apologize, I am new here, I am just trying to help.
No, it's okay, it's all right. I just,
30 lashes.
that's kind of how I heard it. I heard it that it was sort of all lumped into one.
Okay, I heard just one. I heard that she just made a motion about the masking of the athletes and making it mandatory for all students at all times to be wearing masks. That's what I
That
thought.
was my intent.
That's what I heard as well.
Okay.
During sporting events.
Just at
Or-
all
or
times,
athletics.
period,
That's
just at all
the
times.
definition of our universal masking.
So it is grouped
Which one do you
together.
like better?
So it is together.
It is together. That's my point.
Angela's trying to help.
I know.
Well,
But-
it really needs to be all activities, co-curricular activities.
Drama,
Correct,
theater,
at all
everything.
times. That's-
At all
that's-
times, right.
Just say sports and you have performing arts after school.
No, because the other motion is to accept the recommendation of the Health Advisory Committee, which is where is that?
To continue the
To-
universal. So her motion is to
Make
clarify
it universal.
what the mandatory masking includes, that it would include the athletes in any after-school co-curricular, extracurricular. So that's one motion. And then the second one would be to take that mandatory masking policy and keep it in place until a significant change occurs. So I see it as two separate.
Here's my issue, and Matt looks a little quizzical as well. If we're saying, our discussion just kind of detailed the fact that we've all come to the conclusion that in order to keep the universal masking, and the random 5-year-old doesn't have to quarantine because someone played hoops without a mask on. So do we really need two separate things, or did the internal discussion cover the overall mask mandate? And we're gonna say, let's keep going for, I think the health recommendation discussion was, do we vote to, keep the mask mandate from now until mid-March? Or, because I don't think we have to overcomplicate things. If we've said, university agreed in the last 45 minutes that everyone in the district, from drama to basketball to pre-K, everyone's wearing a mask. So it's the catch-all, the massive umbrella of masking. Is that, and we just agree to do that for till March type of thing, and we make that motion.
And you
Yeah, athletes are
absolutely could,
included.
you could make one motion if you wanted, although I heard you say you're concerned with making one motion, but that you could redefine the meaning of the mandatory mask and then have it extend until the end of March, or the recommendation was until a significant change occurs. I will do whatever you guys want.
I heard the two, sorry, can I,
Oh, sure.
is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard the two made sense to me. One, the co-curricular one would sort of close the loop that we're doing something, we're already doing this, except for really the athletics, but all the co-curriculars. So by doing a motion for the co-curriculars, we close that loop, kind of, making sure that we're there as a vote. Okay, we're going to move to that. This is what universal masking means. And then the second one would be the until a change occurs.
And accepting only positive home tests.
And accepting.
That's a pretty clear cut. I'll make that motion.
There's already a motion. I already have Ann and Veronica. So is that, can you restate? Would you restate your motion?
You dare.
What did you say?
No pressure.
So I think there could possibly be three motions. Technically speaking, I don't want to complicate things, but the one original motion is to adopt what the health committee suggests, that we continue to mandate masks. Do another motion to stop voting on it every month until there's a major change, or until the end of March. And the third one is that we make a motion to change what we've already voted on, which is masking during games is required now. So those are three motions that I think cover it all, and we can vote our conscience at that point. I'm not having to vote on just a thumbs up or thumbs down on two things that are combined. Because I don't agree with them having to wear masks during a game.
So I would agree with you, Matt, that there could be three. And then but I also think that if we did it that way with the masking during play and all co-curricular activities, that we could also give the superintendent the authority to investigate whether that's actually what was intended. Maybe we didn't understand what we think we understood.
Well, until they clarify it, I think that the three motions probably would cover us. And
Yes,
frankly, the mask mandate throughout is gonna probably pass anyway. It's just the point I wanted to bring up.
no, and I don't disagree with you. And I think we need clarity. So what I'm wondering is if and it doesn't matter, you guys, please decide. Do we give the superintendent the authority to make the change if it is that they don't have to while they're playing, but only while they're sitting on the bench? Or if there's a change to that, can we allow her to just go ahead and do that rather than waiting for another board meeting? in a
So
month?
that would be another.
To reverse
that.
To reverse something in a month.
That
So
would
would
be
be a
another
fourth
motion,
motion.
Becky, or no?
No, include
just
it.
incorporate it into
To
the-
incorporate it into the athletics and co-curricular part.
Can
I know
I
it's
again?
worded, I know
You
it's a
got
lot.
this.
I would like to make a motion for the board to enforce a mandatory masking policy, including all co-curricular activities, unless the superintendent discovers that the SOP guidance has changed.
Yes, I second. Is
Yes,
that clear?
And then she can reverse it without us being there,
Right.
without us gathering.
yes.
So then it can be just an immediate.
Yes, and then the superintendent would have discretion to make that change to align our policy with what standard.
It's the same motion.
That's what that's.
Okay,
That's-
I know, we're just trying to, I just want to be really clear and be helpful and.
There's nothing clear about the mask mandates and the CDC policies and stuff like that.
You're right.
unfortunately. So,
Yep, you're not gonna get any argument here. Okay, clear as mud. So we have a motion and a second. Everyone gonna be all right? This is probably the most confusing conversation we've had in a really long time. All right, all those in favor?
Okay, you guys, I'm gonna need to,
And this is for the,
This is so we can keep kids in school, right?
correct,
Everybody has to wear a mask at all times so kids can come to school.
yes.
Okay, I just want to be
then
clear.
this is the athletics portion.
This is the athletics part.
Well, if you word it that way, but that's not the way I take it, so.
Yes, it's the only way to keep kids from
We've been
having to
talking about.
quarantine.
Yes, so that the 5-year-old doesn't have to be quarantined.
Okay, it's gonna be easier for me if I just go around, call your
Yeah.
name and tell me your vote. So, Veronica,
Yay.
Becky,
Yay.
Teresa,
Nay.
Matt, Lily Bridge,
Yay.
Jim Lothridge,
For the first time in my career, nay.
Matt Marshall,
Yeah.
Ange Pitterock, yay, Diane Potter,
Yay.
Patrick Saucier,
Nay.
Tracy, I'm sorry,
It's
Alyssa
okay.
Tracy,
Yay.
Tony V,
Yay.
Sophie Matthew.
Yay.
Okay, so that's, eight.
Nicole,
Oh, why did I skip Nicole? Sorry, Nicole.
Not the first or last. I wish, yay.
With yay?
Yay, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, so that is 9-3. And so the vote is 9,799 to 3,813, so it passes. Sorry, I just need to make sure I record this. Okay, so it passes. So what's the next motion?
Matt, do you want to make this next motion?
The one regarding, not voting ever again.
Just set it up.
I would make a motion that the Health Advisory Committee continues to meet every month, provides info to the school board as a matter of us to just info us, keep us up to speed. And that we do not vote as a board until the end of March or the April school board meeting, whether we continue masking or we don't.
I'll second that.
quick question on that, if possible.
Sure.
If something major happens between now and the April meeting, will the school board reconvene to do away with the mask mandates if COVID disappears
Oh, yeah.
off the face of the planet is,
In a heartbeat.
okay.
We might even have a special meeting with a celebration.
Oh, that was,
Please
could we
invite
make that, yeah, okay.
Absolutely. I will invite you. Oh, yes, yes. So we have a motion, a second, promise of a party. Do we need to do, we need to, yes. So do you want to call again? Call
Yes,
them all.
Veronica,
Yay.
Becky,
Yay.
Teresa,
Nay.
Matt Lillibridge,
Yay.
Jim Lothridge.
Yeah.
Nicole Medora,
Yay.
Matt Marshall,
Yay.
Ange Pitera, Diane Potter,
Yay.
Patrick Saucier,
Good thing you're sitting down, yay. Sorry.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
Tony V.
Yay.
Okay, that's 11 to 1.
Because you want to come to the party.
So that passes 12,280 to 1,332. All right, was there a third motion?
The third motion based upon that the advisement from the Health Advisory Committee is we only accept the positive home tests.
Second.
So Matt, Lillibridge, Tony, only accept positive.
So we have a motion. Are you making that motion or you, okay, do we have a second?
Yeah.
Oh, Tony, I'm sorry.
Okay, so only accept positive home tests. Do I need to do this? And go through?
Let's try it with our hands.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Awesome.
Look
Thank
at
you.
that. Oh, my goodness.
We're gaining ground with COVID. people.
Won't it be a great day when we don't have to do this and we can just do other stuff?
Yes.
I
Oh,
didn't ask Sophie about the,
We just changed.
that the HAC continues to meet, provide info to the board, not vote until the April board meeting on whether to mask or not. Was that a yay or?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, awesome. The only other thing then, if we're ready to move on, is I just wanted to give you an update on the status of pool testing. The application has been submitted. But at this time, I'm not fast tracking it. And I hope that that's okay, that we don't fast track it. A couple reasons is right now, given the current workload of our nurses, adding this to their plate would be difficult, given what we just discussed. We do not need to quarantine any of our students just by using the mask mandate. So the benefit of the pool testing is not immediate. Again, last time when we talked about pool testing, we were approving it as a way of eliminating the mask mandate. So masks are going to be here for a while, so there isn't that immediate need. However, again, as I hear that there may be some additional changes to the SOP, if any of them make the pool testing more relevant and more important as a part of that process, then we will certainly talk about moving forward. So it's not done, it's just sitting in the wings a little bit. So. And I did provide you just another kind of graph that I hope is helpful on what to do if someone's positive or if they are exposed and they need to quarantine.
So it's clear, but not nearly as fun as Alyssa's.
Yeah, right. So that's all that I have.
Thank you.
That's it, 1 hour.
Here we go.
That's how we planned it.
Yeah, we planned it just this way. Let's see, review and approval of agenda minutes, prioritization of items and alteration of the established agenda format sequence as needed.
Yes, so since this was published before Christmas, under recognitions and celebrations, I've added Patrick Saucier, who is leaving the board, and so added him to be recognized for his years of service to the district. Under correspondence, we have a letter of resignation from Patrick Saucier, that's effective after this board meeting. Also, I've added a resignation from Roger Collins, who is the freshman basketball coach, effective January 9th. He's accepted another job and is leaving, so there's that. So general information on the back page, we're hiring Jordan Hersom to fill that vacant position. Jordan is a teacher at the high school. Under new business, I do want to update you on new OSHA, federal OSHA requirements for employees to be vaccinated or tested weekly. And under my report, I added a school resource officer update.
Motion to accept the agenda as adjusted.
Make that motion.
From Nicole, second. From Patrick. All those, any questions or comments? All those in
I was
favor?
voting.
Jump the gun. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Let's see. Approval of the agenda, approval of minutes of previous meetings, regular board meeting, December 2nd, 2021. Motion to accept.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Tony, second by Alyssa. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And then Patrick Saucier.
I hope you're going up.
Are you cold?
I'm earning a coffee right now, just so.
Patrick, you came to the board at the probably the most difficult time that anyone could come to the board. So I thank you for coming.
It's my fault. Maybe it's gonna go away when I leave. I'm just saying.
No, but it's been really great. I've known you for a lot of years, 12 or 15 or something like that. It's been really fun and nice to work with you here, even though this has been a really weird period of time, to say the least. But I want to thank you for all the things that you bring to the table, for your courage to speak always, even when it's different, because we don't all need to agree all the time. What we need to do is be able to have conversation. I'm so grateful personally for the conversations that you and I are able to have outside the boardroom. And then we don't always think the same way. And I learn from you every time. I learn something more. And I just want to thank you. Tell you I'm going to miss you. And I would hug you, but that wouldn't be socially distancing. And here's a gift for you from the board.
Appreciate it.
Don't be a stranger.
Oh, I'll be sitting over there.
There you go.
I'll sit in the back row.
With all the church ladies. The church ladies.
Maybe they'll keep me in line, just smack me around, tell me to shut up.
Well, thank you. Moving along, resignation as written.
As written, I would highlight that we have a high school staff member who has submitted their resignation effective the middle of January. To my knowledge, we still have not found a long-term substitute for that position. So if anyone wants to sub
How long is that?
through the rest of the school year, we are looking for a high school English teacher. So we need a long-term sub to get us through the remainder of the school year. The rest are as written.
Okay, committee reports. Capital Area Tech Advisory.
Well,
Jim, do you want to do that one?
yeah, I will do that. You'll probably have to help me.
Sure.
I've attended my first meeting this month, last month.
Yay.
I was totally lost. And there's so much going on in that committee that I will get up to speed, but it was a challenging meeting. And there is an agreement that we do need to approve, and it has to do with how we proceed. And I don't fully understand so maybe you could explain what that part is, but I think it's a very useful committee, and I know I have a grandson going there, learning to be a welder. And I think from what I've gleaned from him, he's loving it. And so I'm all in favor of it, and I'm looking forward to helping out as much as I can. I didn't think I needed to forward the calendar to you so that you could put it down first, that you already knew the calendar for us. And but other than that, everything was good. It's a good group of people. And I thought it was a very interesting meeting.
Yeah, it was a tough meeting to be your first meeting, Jim. And since you mentioned calendar, it is that time of the year where we are beginning to develop the regional calendar. So that is something that I worked on over Christmas break. It's in the hands of the other school districts right now to take a look at. Hopefully we'll have some feedback soon, and we'll definitely move forward from there. As a reminder for everyone who's listening, we are required by law to coordinate our school calendar with all of the school districts that send students to capital area tech. And by law, we can only have 5 dissimilar days. So that includes Winthrop, RSU2, MSAD11, RSU 38, which is Maranacook, Augusta. And then there are some other towns, Erskine, but Erskine doesn't have to meet the same requirement because it's a private school. So it's, I think we're pretty streamlined now, but we weren't always. So we usually are able to come within probably 2 or 3 dissimilar days, that's it. It's usually the early release days that catch us by surprise. But the cooperative agreement, I shared this with you, I think at the last meeting. And again, the cooperative agreement, it helps to provide some direction to the advisory committee. The advisory committee is made up of the superintendent from all of the sending school districts and a school board representative. And so this document, which I provided you a copy so that you could look at it, it kind of guides our decision making. And you can see the weighted votes, should we get to a place that we need to weight our votes, how we're going to govern ourselves. And then it kind of gets through to financing. So right now, the Department of Education fully funds the tech schools, and they receive their funding directly through the ED 279, the same funding mechanism that the school receives. Our school district and all other school districts receive its funding, but we need to have a mechanism just in case there are expenses that exceed what is covered by the funding formula. So in the back, there's also a breakdown of how those expenditures, should we approve them, how they would be shared amongst the school districts, the sending school districts. And basically what we decided that we would do is there's something called the Perkins Secondary Data Count. It comes from the DOE. And so that we would be using student totals, student enrollment, and we'd be using that as a basis for our weighted votes and our cost sharing. When I shared this with you before, there were 2 different models, one for weighted votes and one for cost sharing. It was like, that doesn't make sense at all. They really need to match. And so now they do. So it does require a vote of the board. And of course, Becky actually will have to sign it for the board.
I make a motion, we accept the approval of the cooperative agreement.
Second.
Second by Tony. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Great, thank you. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, curriculum committee.
We met on December 14th at 3:30, and it's a YouTube video for those out there that would like to go watch it. It was really probably one of my favorite meetings we've had. A while back, we approved implementation of some new curriculum for math and the ELA, grades K through 8. Angela set up a meeting with several teachers so we could get a feel for how things were going, what they liked, what they didn't like, how the students were doing, the pros and cons, if you will. some of the pros, the kids are engaged, the teachers actually really love the curriculum. But that whole thing is obviously based on, the curriculum works really well when we're in person, and it's really not something that's set up for working very well if we go into a remote type status. So teaching in person with the curriculum that we purchased last year or the year before is really important. So I just wanted to point that out. We also asked them to come back in the spring or maybe late spring to give us a brief as to how things have progressed between December 14th and say the end of April. So did you want to add anything?
Yes, I was asked to share some stuff.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to keep it, yep, I'm gonna try to.
Angela, thank you.
So I put some slides together.
That meeting went like, what, an hour and 45 minutes?
It went really long.
Well, I think it's 1 hour 58 minutes because at your encouragement, I went in and watched it. It was a great meeting,
Yeah.
great question, great questions, great presentations from the staff and teachers. It was really very good.
Yep. Nope. Just kidding. Okay. So if you didn't get a chance to see the video, then this will give, or you weren't there, then this will give you a little bit of a glimpse as to what happened. We did have representation of staff from across most of our buildings, a range of grade levels, and then of course across the middle school building. Most of the programs we implemented were for kindergarten through 8th grade in the last year or 2 years, depending on when it was, but all of it's been in the middle of this COVID period of time, which has been unique for our staff. So at the request of the curriculum committee, we invited the teachers in. I had no idea what they were going to say, so but it was dynamic and interesting. So in math, I see this, but not that. It'll be fun. So in math, there are 3 different programs that support our vision for mathematics instruction. In K to 5, there are 2 choices. And it kind of goes along a spectrum from where we were, which was very procedural math, to where we really want to be, which is a strong, interactive, balanced math program of concepts, representations, and procedures. All 3 are equally important. And the use of productive discourse and collaboration is critical in math learning. It builds math confidence and allows for inclusive practices, all students to really engage in math learning. So SFUSD math is sort of at that end of the spectrum, and Ready Classroom is almost there. And so after a significant review with staff, most staff are supported Ready Classroom, and because of SFUSD math having not having the cost associated with it, we could opt for both. But the decision has to be that at a grade level, the whole team at that grade level has to agree to one or the other. They can't split by classroom, so that there's some kind of equitable experiences. There has been alignment as much as possible across the program. So if the student moves from one classroom in one building to another classroom in another building, they'll be okay. We've thought that through. And then Open Up Education is our new middle school program that we're phasing in from a very procedural Glencoe math program. And all of them just have greater collaboration, more student-centered instruction, a lot more focusing on math thinking, out loud math thinking, supporting one another's thinking, and critical thinking. But we still do procedures. We still get there. We're not dumping that. It's part of math. But we don't just start there as the only method. I have to do this every time.
I don't think so.
Really?
Only when it happens.
Sorry. It's okay.
It's a little.
So
Experiment.
because it's new to us and because we've been in the middle of COVID world, I don't really have like good video of our own district doing this. But I wanted to show you just a couple minutes of sort of what a math classroom can look like when the elements are put in place. And I would say a lot of our math classrooms are now looking like this. There's a real balance of instruction. So I'm going to attempt to share this. Hopefully it'll, yeah, if there's sound.
Screen's frozen.
It's frozen again.
So we're gonna try something a little bit different this time. What do you
Plug it.
Try that.
So what do you want me to do?
So I want you to share that.
Hi, folks.
Sorry. If your computer is frozen, you can come put it over the vent over here. It's pulling out a lot on here.
I might have just kept hitting up.
We're having a heat wave over here.
Volume's not going on up there. That is a setting in Zoom.
And this is Zephyr Hills, Florida.
Yeah, this is not our district, just to be clear. I just needed to find a video that did represent what it would look like in our district.
I've just been
We are
there,
going-
so I.
We are going to try to get our district going.
That'd be cool.
I think it will be much more powerful for you, but so this might not be worth, if I can't get this one going, I won't share any of the videos. Like audio.
And our computers are sluggish this week coming out of break.
Teachers are setting the stage, they have routines in place to talk about numbers, to really talk about how students are processing the information and how they're getting their answer and how they're supporting their answer with evidence and by showing their work.
What you're saying, like how it's 3 times 15, I thought the 3 switched with the 5, make it 13 times 5, and we get the same answer.
They need to make it 10 facts because 5 plus 5 is 10, 7 plus 3 is 10.
I have 59. Who has 6 tens and 6 ones? I have 66. Who has 3 tens and 0 1?
Our teachers are also engaging our students in cognitively complex tasks. The mathematical practices are alive in their rooms and evident from just walking in and looking at their classroom environment and how the students are engaged with one another and with the math work as well.
Oh, the way that he did it, is he just switched the 5 and the 4 is what I'm thinking. Is that what you did to Marcion? 43, and then you would have 3 and put it by 3. So it would be 13 minus 8, and that would equal 5. And what do we put next? Good job. And how many more did we get? We had 5. We got how many more? 1 more, and that equals how many?
You're going to see flexible grouping. So instead of just the teacher up front and being the leader, we want the teacher to be more of a facilitator, working in small groups, leading centers, all focused on the mathematical practices and going deeper in math and really understanding the process, not just the product, because we know both are equally important.
Do you think that's not colored in yellow? Because there's only 3 fourths of the mile.
Okay, so that's one whole 4 fourths.
See, when you make 6s, you're gonna get the line down the middle and then you connect. Okay. That's not good. Now you gotta count. Do you all agree with that? Do you agree with 4?
And then finally, you'll see different ways that students will practice and ensuring that they're really in control and owning their learning, that it's not them sitting back being spoon-fed the instruction, the math learning, but that they are discovering it on their own, that they're making relevant connections to the real world, and that they're really owning that learning and learning from one another. In the math classroom with the balanced math block time should be a classroom where all students are also the teachers, and they're learning from one another, learning new strategies, they're learning how to be efficient and fluent, and that it's really has transformed what the traditional math classroom used to look like.
Ben, bro, I want you to write that addition sentence. I want you to write the addition sentence for what Adelie made.
Can I just jump in a second? When the teachers presented, they shared just so much stuff that's so similar to what we just saw there. About facilitating the groups, about how they alternated between having the kids do 2, I forget what they call it, but one student was the teacher and one student continued to be the student to ask questions. Sometimes they did facilitated groups, sometimes they did the full class, more traditional versions. Anyway, what I heard there was exactly what we heard from the teachers of this district.
And the other positive thing that we heard was, to your point, I mean, you have a teacher, and if you have an ed tech, they can co-facilitate with that type of environment. And they really like that.
What I liked, Andrea, is that the staff liked it.
Oh,
They
yeah.
seemed really excited about it and anxious to continue, and I was really impressed with the staff and the program. I
Yeah.
think you made a good choice.
Well, it was a team effort, and one of the things they did say that would improve it, of course, is to continue to develop opportunities for more of that application piece that you saw in the game-based play. And so SFUSD math has more of that. And so our coaches have been kind of like, as they're learning where people are ready for this, bringing in some of those games and teach you the resources and prepping them with them, so that they can weave it into Ready Classroom, even if it's not part of Ready Classroom. And that's like just making sure we have enough depth of knowledge to know what each program has and where we can create some interchange and opportunities. All of our math programs are language heavy. That was something that was raised. It's a good thing, because we really need to continue to build our skills in literacy, and that should happen across disciplines. It's a challenging thing also, because if language is a barrier for you, then that shows up sometimes in math. And so teachers are becoming good at reducing language in some spaces, going oral in other spaces. In kindergarten, the workbook is sometimes a barrier that's not, I mean, they're pre-readers or becoming early readers. And so working around some of those challenges, which are inevitable in any program, they have the discretion to do that. It's important they ask, how might we do this? And we think creatively towards solutions that are in the best interest of the kids.
Did Liz get her stands?
Sorry,
Did Liz get her book stands?
not yet, but everyone got their chart paper.
Oh,
Remember that was another big thing that came up. Everyone got the chart paper. So I think the stands are in a budget, school budget request. Yeah. And then again, just taking pictures is not, it doesn't ever capture what you want. Like, this is a middle school classroom, but what you don't know is like the level of interaction that's actually happening. When I was watching the Florida video, it's hard because I was like, they're not masking and they're all over the place, and we've just gotten so used to that. And our teachers have been so creative about how to make sure students are still doing partner work, group work, using manipulatives and moving despite all this. And we can really capture that effectively in a photo. We'll keep working on finding ways to capture that so you can kind of see what that looks like. So this probably isn't our best representation, but you can see like number lines up here and graphs, and there are some pairings, even though there are some absent students in this video. And so that there is a level of interaction and discourse still, despite where we are.
I heard her, I think it was the middle school teachers who were saying that because they pool, it makes it easier to collaborate and for them to talk. And I specifically heard them say they saw their kids developing math confidence, because that phrase I never felt applied to me. So I'd love to have been something like that.
Yeah, that's been like one of our big goals, is to develop that and to by increasing the discourse, we're recognizing there are different ways to solve a solution, and that's okay, rather than showing the procedure, following the procedure, and some of our kids going like, that makes no sense to me, but I'm not going to say anything because the teacher's right, and now understanding there's different ways to tackle that, and we can still get to the same outcome. And so it's going to take time. This is not magic. It doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take different levels of support, but I think we're making some progress. And this is just a very brief summary of some of what you saw in the video or if you were there. But they're really loving that it's instead of doing a myriad of problems, you're slowing down, doing a few problems, you're deconstructing it, you're deeply understanding it, you're building that community. But remote settings, very difficult to engage or to teach through in this environment. It takes time for a teacher to become really good. It's a very big shift in how we teach math instruction. And so, their own confidence level is going to develop over time. And there'll be good days and not so great days. And that we really need to universally across the district or across the grade level at the middle school have some common assessments and some success criteria for them to use to kind of continue to understand where the students are at and provide adequate feedback and such. So we're not done by any means.
Angela.
Yeah, that's
Sorry, I'm looking at you.
sorry. We've kind of heard her respond now.
I know.
All the time.
It's all good. No, I was just gonna also share my 7th grader. I think I forgot we did this, right? So I was just saying that to Matt. Like, she's really enjoying math. She's usually a kid that's a writer. And she already knows she can go to like a tutorial the teacher already has before she even has to ask the teacher. And sort of does that on her own, like you said, the math confidence thing, which is pretty cool to see, so that's another reinforcement. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're coming up with, they're learning what's working for kids, and it's just a little different.
Right.
And just to try to keep this tight and not go the hour and 45 minutes we went. English language arts, we have a lot actually happening in English language arts in the K-5 field, especially that this is the biggest piece is something called collaborative literacy. I just want to start by saying we have not had a comprehensive universal set of district resources for teachers in a very long time. If ever some of the teachers said they never had them, they're 28-year veteran teachers. We have had some things like Words Their Way at one point was available across the district. But but not like a comprehensive literacy. And so that's something that the curriculum committee committed to and we followed through with. So collaborative literacy is where we went, being a reader, a writer, making meaning in book clubs. And then at the early foundational levels, we've also been engaging in a Sounds First Phonics program and a phonological awareness program called Integrity. It's a lot for teachers to take on. One of the things we heard was it's a lot of manuals. September and October might not have been fun, especially for principals who were listening to the teachers talk about how much reading they had on a daily basis in order to be prepared just for the next lesson. Not even the whole week.
They did say they were getting used to it.
They did. They said, well, there's a pattern, they're understanding it, they have they see the big picture now, they're seeing some wins, and they can be more efficient. And that's normal. Like that growth is normal, but it takes a little time. So all of that's research-based, that's super exciting. It's current and research-based.
What is phonological awareness? Just
You're
short.
gonna ask me. It's what you hear of the sounds and how they kind of interact.
Think of it as reading in the dark. You don't need to see the letters, you hear them.
And then we work towards the visual, and then we work towards putting them together and taking them apart.
The write what you hear, basically, that's what my first grade has been doing, and don't worry about the spelling quite yet.
You get there though.
You get
This-
there, yeah.
This program, that's always been a big question. What about spelling? This program actually builds it up based on, oh gosh, this is where my Tuesday, the coaches are coming, including the literacy coaches, but it's not like a series of 10 words that we do through a spelling test. It's word families that come together first, and then we slowly over time learn the rules. And there's a real sequential approach to it. And that's how they'll learn their spelling. So the very first part is hearing and getting those sounds, saying the sounds and hearing the sounds properly.
Can I add to it?
Yes.
So phonological processing, like typically when we were growing up, we had phonics. We always thought of like letters and sounds. And so you had a letter and you wrote it, you had sound out words to code it. But there's another whole section, there's another path to, it's called phonological processing. It's how your brain processes sounds. So rhyming, understanding how to segment a word into parts. Being able to identify the beginning of a word, is the first sound of a word, the last sound of a word, inside of a word, and then being able to change the sound. So if I said like bat, say it again, don't say but, say the kids have to say mat. Say it again, don't say say up. Now they're saying mutt. Don't say say good. Now the kids are saying mug. And it's all done orally. There's no print in front of you. So it's really having kids being able to do that in their heads to build that fluency for understanding how sound works. So
And it
there's like two
creates,
tracks.
it creates a conceptual framework in your brain so that then as you build in the sight part of it, it has places for it to store and be accessed. And without all that, it gets to be a jumbled mess. And then we have processing off issues and so on. That was really nice. Thank you for adding that. I appreciate
I've
it.
lived that land for about 30 years.
Yeah, I get it. I'm not at the point where I'm fluent in speaking about it yet. So I'm so grateful. And in the middle school, we adopted something called Amplify ELA for a 3-year window. In the middle school, we had a lot of individualized units of study, even across one grade level. And so it was just, this is an opportunity to bring us together around, all right, what does the research say about the science of reading? What is rigorous grade level instruction, the text that supports that? And then the features that we were sold on with this is that it's an integrated approach of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and language usage, like grammar and such. And we actually were interested in it because it had an online component. And this was pre-COVID when we really started exploring this. There was a multimedia approach. It's designed specifically for adolescents, for middle school students. And we've learned that it probably is too much online. Because it's designed as a K-8 program, there's a little bit of scaffolding we've had to add in and draw back some pieces in order for our students to be well prepared for this. And so we're making significant small adjustments as we work on it with students. So I will say that this is our biggest growing pain is Amplify ELA. There's good parts to it, really good parts. There's some exhaustion with online learning, totally fair. So we're trying to like figure out where to make some tweaks there. And we have to get through get through that full cycle so we can really do some adjustments over the summer and feel really strong next year. But we're trying to do that with the coaches and the teachers in this like planning, doing, reflecting cycle that we're doing every quarter right now. So I think we're going to get there.
Angela, is Amplify the one that's like has like 9 modules?
Yes, and we're not doing all 9 because we
Quite
knew it
lengthy,
would
right?
take us longer. this
Quite
year.
lengthy.
Yeah, just too long this year. I don't want to keep you too late, so maybe I'll just send this to you, but this is a little video about what the collaborative literacy looks like in the class, you know, like the components and what it looks like. I mean, if you really want it, I can send it, but yeah, it's like 2 minutes,
Yeah, send it.
pretty short. Okay, so
Absolutely.
I can send it in an email to the whole board, right? It's allowed.
Please, yes.
And then just because I want to be conscientious of your time. And then just a few things from the meeting. And I'll send this whole thing as a PDF. But like a grade 1 teacher talking about, there's a lot of new vocab being introduced at levels that's integrated into the text that they're reading, the shared reading. And kids are taking it and running. And we heard this at the curriculum committee. Like a first grader learning about indulge a few weeks prior through shared reading and class discussion. Indulge is not typically a first grade word, but it was part of like what was intended in that unit of study. And then the children are, the teacher's talking about holiday gifts and the children are asking if she'll be indulging them in gifts this year. So they're applying their language without the structure of the lesson and the unit, you know, they're applying it outside of that. A 4th grade teacher who is a veteran, excellent teacher saying she just can't believe what her kids can do. I mean, to hear that from that person was like, oh my word. And she has high expectations for her learners and for all learners. And so that was pretty phenomenal. A 1st grade teacher talking about the word accuse was being used in a text. They also, in a separate setting, learned about the ER suffix, reader and writer and all that. And then comes in from recess all worked up and saying that this person accused me of taking a soccer ball, and then it morphed into someone was an accuser. So they're really playing with language, they're applying it in context. It's pretty exciting. And then some 2nd grade teachers really just trying to get to the core of the literacy program, saying there are different elements, but it meets the needs of students. There's a wide selection of text to read. That's thanks to the commitment of this committee and the board. It's student-centered, aligns with best practices, and allows consistency. Consistency with teacher discretion, right? We're gonna have the pacing slightly different for different groups of students, but consistency that we haven't seen before. And there was a lot of positive comments. I mean, I felt like a lot of positive comments, didn't you?
Yeah, they were excited.
Yeah, they seemed excited. I really appreciated, the cross-section of experience and approaches, and the message was so consistent, but yeah, we had, very seasoned teachers and very new.
Brand new.
Brand new. And they all seemed to ramp up well at the, in the process and had such similar things to say like this. It's really
Yeah, it was
impressive.
genuine and they seemed comfortable in making adaptations, working with you, I'm sure, but like I think everything needs a structure, but then you gotta jump off it sometimes.
Yep. Yeah, there's been a couple times where they've substituted poems or substituted a book or it's Halloween, and instead of the poem that's part of the shared reading that's in the program, they understood the purpose of the poem and they found a Halloween-based poem that supports the same purpose and went through the same lesson, but with an alternate poem. So, you know, at first it was like, can we do this? And I'm like, as long as you know what the objective is and you can meet that, you can do that. And I mean, that's why we hire good teachers to do that kind of work. And that, again, we're only in the first year, so, you know, we'll continue to make a little adjustments here and there as we learn from them. And this is the same thing with an Amplify, just to give you a glimpse. And then just a quick, just kind of overview of the middle school, especially since that's the one where we know we have pains. Like you can see I crossed something out. That unit of study, it's not that we're totally avoiding it. We know it needs a rewrite for our district. And the particular text is just, it's a little bit controversial in lots of areas in terms of some of the words used inside the text that we're, even including the high school English teachers, aren't comfortable with. So we looked for the same intent, the same themes, a different text. And so we're waiting. We're not doing that in our first year. We're going to do that collectively as a team and work on writing and adapting that unit. And we consulted with Amplify's literacy specialists to ensure that we're on the right track. But then there's other things like they're studying, grade 7 right now is studying brain science. And Kaylee was here and said that's one of their favorites right now. But it's because it's part of the nonfiction unit of study. And so this is really balancing fiction and nonfiction, but getting still to the literary elements that they need to get to. And so we're not going to be able to get to every one of these units at each grade level this year in our very first year. So we've kind of made some deliberate decisions as a team, and then every 7th grade class will get to the same units, or 8th grade or 6th grade, but they won't get to all of these. And then the connections are just how you can see there are elements and themes that they've mapped out behind those colors that clarify why it's important that they get to Summer of the Mariposas, because it will help 7th grade's poetry and Poe unit, Edgar Allan Poe. That will then help the Romeo and Juliet unit, right? And so, and we've actually adapted, instead of Romeo and Juliet, I can't remember which one we're doing, but another Shakespeare piece so that 9th grade can maintain their Romeo and Juliet work, but this will scaffold it so they'll be even more prepared for 9th grade work. So that's kind of where we are at. And just, we've already sort of said what were the great, pieces. There's a few things, it's a learning curve and all that, but the stamina and the skills the kids are developing, the positive energy, the quality of the materials, and the quality of the text, the things that kids are reading is really powerful. And it doesn't matter what year you started teaching in this district, you have those resources in your classroom. That's critical, right? So you have a great library. A lot of times if you're walking into a classroom of a 25-year veteran teacher and versus a first-year teacher, now you have a great library. It doesn't matter how many years they've been teaching. And that's it.
So I would just like to say one thing.
Sure.
Angela, getting buy-in from people is important, I think. It was obvious that every one of those teachers enjoyed the curriculum that they're teaching. So I just wanted to thank you for allowing, getting buy-in from them, because you actually ask them what they think. And that's very, very helpful.
And I will say that's where we learned work to do at the middle school ELA, because what we got, we had a different mindset. We were like, oh yeah, all online and all this media, and the kids are like, I don't want to touch a computer, and so I appreciate that, and I know there's more work to do with that team, and so we're building out, and I've worked with Sarah and the coaches, we're building out some plans to ensure they really feel invested and have ownership over some of the decisions, so that we can use the program, but we don't have to use it every element in the exact same way. We can make some adjustments locally as long as we know what our learning objectives are, and we'll get there. It's just that one's a little bit more of a learning curve for us. Yeah, but thank you.
If I just extend the thanks also to the teachers for being there and for you
Oh.
pulling them in, having them in and their testimony was really powerful. I know they took time to prepare it and to be here. And it was really rich and vivid. I appreciated that.
Yeah, it was
Sure.
great. I loved it.
And I have to say on a personal note, it was really nice to see Liz as a teacher and how passionate she is about her little kindergartens. Was that? Because I've known her since she was in kindergarten. So it was nice.
We have a lot of Gardner graduates as educators. It's exciting.
It's great that they come back and are invested in their community. It's really wonderful. Thank you for that. And I would encourage any of you who have not watched the curriculum committee video yeah, to watch it. It's very good. I guess it's the live stream.
VHS.
Pull out your cassette. And
I know.
Prior DVD.
Oh,
And just as a reminder, Tuesday, the coaches will be on site. There's 5 of them. And they'll be we'll have a little report for the curriculum committee on like how they spend their time, not with whom, you won't know any of that, but how they spend their time and the perceived impact of that. And then you just can ask questions. You've invested a lot in having coaches to support our teachers in this steep learning curve that they have. So if you're not on the committee, I think you're still welcome, right? To
Absolutely.
come to the meeting at 3:30 and ask the questions you might have. So.
Thank you so much. That was great.
Thank you.
Exactly what we hoped for. Dropout prevention, doesn't look like there was a meeting.
We did not have a meeting. We will have a meeting this month. We want to have the holiday on. We're right in the middle of the holiday break too.
Absolutely, yes, it would have been. Finance committee, we had a meeting on the 16th, 14th? 14th, on the 14th, and Andrea went over the ED 279, which was, again, really informative. We talked about, she just went through each individual piece of it. And then we did our long-range planning. We had it up and it disappeared. Capital improvement plan, the 5-year capital improvement plan. We went over that. So we will be going over the ED 279 continuously for the next bit of time. I encourage anyone who's not on the finance committee to come, especially if you're new and don't necessarily understand the funding formula. It takes a hot minute to get there. And Andrea is just so great and thorough at helping us understand it, especially as we're looking at curriculum changes and updates and all the things that we need moving forward as we endure the remnants of COVID. And where are we going to be when all of them will shake out? So this is our December meeting. Let's see. Policy committee.
Policy, so yeah, you can see we didn't meet in December. We do have the policies listed for a second reading. We had reviewed those for a first reading in December at the board meeting. So if I could put forward a motion to accept the policies as listed, policies listed as a bundle. Second reading.
You can second that, if you'd like.
Great. Any questions or comments about these policies?
I was voting already.
All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. All righty. Student representatives. Look at you with your little written. Your written report.
Well, over the winter break, the civil rights team, they were able to fully sponsor a local family for the holidays with over $800 of donated gifts. Also, over the holidays, the Interact Club coordinated Operation Christmas.
each family member received clothing, footwear, wish list gifts, and stocking stuffers. Families also received 2 weeks worth of groceries and Christmas dinner if needed. The clubs that were included and the Interact Club would like to thank were Gardner Area High School JMG, Student Council, National Honor Society, Latin Club, and the Civil Rights Team. We would also like to thank the following community organizations: Gardner Rotary, Girl Scout Troop 673, Boy Scout Troop 672, and Cub Scout Pack 672, Hannaford Gossens Insurance, as well as many private donors. And lastly, this year's high school musical is Mamma Mia. Ticket sales go up the 25th. And the show dates are the first weekend in February, and it's going to be very fun. I'm on the backstage crew and they're doing great. So very exciting.
Will they be able to pull their masks down to sing?
It depends on where we are with that.
Last year, when they did the Drowsy Chaperone, they had special masks made by Amanda Wade. And so you could still hear them very clearly through their mask. And the main characters have little mics that went into their masks. So you'll all be able to hear them, which is awesome.
And I'm sorry, could you say again when the tickets go on sale?
January 25th.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then opening night is January 25th.
No, opening night is February
6th?
Yes, February 6th.
Nope, sorry, the wrong
It's
month,
the Friday,
February
first
3rd.
Friday.
It's that Thursday, right? February 3rd?
We have a
I thought
board
it was the
meeting.
Friday.
Okay,
Yeah.
February 4th. Right.
If it was on board meeting night, we could go on a field trip.
Well, they typically do.
We did that one
They
year.
Yes, we
typically, it's the first Thursday of the
I
month.
think
happier
they were
times.
doing it Friday and then 2 shows on Saturday, which they haven't done for a while, but I'm not sure. I'll ask them.
That would be fun.
We've done it once before. It was really fun. Because we hardly ever, as a board, get to go do those kinds of things together, so.
That'd be wonderful.
We
could all sing along to it.
That'll be fun. Okay, Wellness Committee has no meeting.
No, the next meeting's next week on the 12th. Yeah, and Ari sent out to the district and anybody that's interested, let me know.
Hope Field Committee, we met this morning and yesterday morning, I'm sorry, and I was unable to be at the whole thing.
Sure, I mean, we talked about the recognition wall. We are trying to get some prices together for the recognition wall, so we know how much that is. And we do have an individual potentially interested in the modular. And so we're just waiting to hear more after the person has had a chance to kind of tour it, so.
I just wanted to ask a question of the committee from the sports boosters perspective. Is there a end date as to when the new shack / storage building is going to be built, or is that still up in the air? We're just kind of wondering because of our fundraising efforts.
Still up in the air. I think we would like to have it in place for the start of the next fall season, ideally, if possible. Is that correct?
Great, thank you. Good question. Any other questions about Hope Field? Moving on, general information. Just as written. Nominations, none. New business.
Yes, in your board packet, you have a request for a trip to Peru or to Lima. Would you like to speak about it? I'm like, wait a minute, I thought it was to Peru, but then maybe I'm not so sure. Let me pull up my document. Yes. A trip to Peru, April 13th through April 22nd, 2023. So it would be a year from this coming April. So Chad, would you like to speak to it up at the podium? Columbia?
Is that like your senior trip? Oh,
That would be a really good one.
yeah, it would. We could fundraise for that.
You'd think 140 graduates.
That sounds like an awful idea.
There'd be a lot of kids transferring into Gardner High School.
Yeah.
Might boost our enrollment a little bit.
That could be a good booster.
Teachers in our world language department. Rasha Blackwood, who is one of our new language teachers, Spanish teacher, has done a significant amount of traveling abroad.
Yeah.
Similar to our other language teachers, she wants to get into the swing of our 4-year rotation of taking trips, and this is the one that she's talked to me about, and we've talked to Pat about. Very much in line with the other trips that Amber has led and that Katie has led, and that Andrea has led. So it'd be a really good experience, and getting your folks approval first, and then we'll start jumping on interest and cost and fundraising and all of that good stuff.
So it's just available to the kids in language or
No,
anybody?
No, anyone in the school. Yeah, just the world language teachers are typically the ones
Hosting
that.
it.
Yep.
Nice.
Amber Dosty is our social studies department chair. She's very active in leading trips and getting trips organized. Katie Collins is one of our department chair for world language education.
And as a reminder, Katie is leading a trip that the board has previously approved. Right, you and I met with Katie, that is scheduled to occur in April. So we are certainly hoping that the travel situation is better by April. Can you remind us where? I want to say that, I don't remember, was it Spain?
Italy and Greece.
Italy and Greece, thank you, okay.
I should know that because she asked me if I wanted to go.
Okay.
But that was previously approved by the board. It was postponed last year and it's scheduled to happen this coming April, over April vacation week. So this does require board approval. I don't know if the board wants to take action.
I make a motion that we accept this trip to Peru in April of
Second.
2023.
Very nice.
Questions or comments or offers to travel? All those in favor? Excellent, motion carries. Great idea. Thank you. I know. Okay, here we go. OSHA.
So with OSHA, I just want to put this on your radar. And I'm certain you've heard about this in the media, that the federal OSHA has put forth the mandate that employers that employ 100 or more people will need to enforce a vaccination mandate. Or if people are not going to be vaccinated, they have to be tested on a weekly basis. So right now, it's my understanding that there's a hearing that's going to be in front of the Supreme Court tomorrow. And so we'll have to see what happens there and whether this goes any further or not. In Maine, the Maine Labor Board, they are scheduled to discuss this on January 18th to determine what the expectations and standards will be for Maine. They can set a higher standard than the federal OSHA, but they can't set a standard less than the minimal set forth by the federal OSHA. So that means, again, at a minimum, mandated vaccinations for all staff. All staff will have to provide proof of their vaccinations. So it's actual documentation, not just a form that says, yes, I was vaccinated.
So the cards.
Like a copy of the card. And they will have, for those who are not vaccinated and don't wish to be vaccinated, there is some type of testing that will have to be done on a weekly basis. I have no more information on that. I don't know if the employee will have to pay for the testing. I don't know if the testing will be done at school. I don't know if pool testing would meet the requirement. None of that information has been decided yet or provided. If the legislation, if the requirement moves forward, then there are some phase-in dates in which this has to be in place. There's one in February, and then I think the last date is like March 17th. So we'll have a little bit of time to phase this in, but not tons. So I will keep you posted as more information becomes available.
Pat, just wondering, do you think that some staffers will leave? I mean, I just don't know where people are at.
I don't know. I mean, we certainly have some staff members who are not vaccinated, but I'm not sure what those staff members' opinions are regarding testing, and whether they are also opposed to testing. If they are, it is possible that they will leave.
You would think nobody would be opposed to testing.
I don't know.
I can share at least a couple things I know when this initially came out in the fall. I know I did have some staff members that came to me who were very upset because of their personal beliefs against vaccination. However, they did say that they weren't opposed to the testing. And that was maybe, I would say, a good 8 to 10 people who would come to speak to me about that. The day it came out, they were pretty upset. And their opinions were very strongly that if they were forced to vaccinate, they would probably leave the profession. But they were not opposed to having to test if that's what it took, so long as they weren't forced to have to actually vaccinate.
That's good to know.
Just food for thought. I believe the reason why this is at the Supreme Court, I think it was the 7th District Court, and I'm not 100% no, absolutely destroyed the case, and that's why it's moving up to the next level to get another. So if you do have staff members, just tell them to be patient, because when I look at the CDC requirements, everything's being laxed. I think we're on the tail end of this whole COVID thing, to be honest with you. So, but just food for thought.
So that's all. I just wanted to make sure that it was on your radar and you understood that this was going to be a possibility moving forward. Board chair report. I don't have anything written down, but I did want to speak to, it was in the newspaper, I believe yesterday or the day before, the girls' basketball trip to Florida. And just to be clear, the board approved the trip in November of 2019. And we never had a conversation about it ever again. COVID came and happened. And so when we were on winter break and someone reached out to me and said, how come our girls are in Florida? And I said, our girls are in Florida? I had no idea. So I was over signing a contract with the superintendent, and I asked her, she didn't know that the team was in Florida. So it not upset about it, not angry about it. However, when our habit is a no surprise rule, and we were surprised. We just didn't know because we did this back in November. So my hope would be that going forward, no intention of blaming anyone or throwing anyone under the bus, but our best work is done when we all know what we're doing and that there's not room for questions within the community. We just need to know what we're doing. So I'm glad that we know that the April trip is coming up because now it's on the radar. We'll hear about it. If it happens or doesn't happen, we'll just know about it. And our best work is done when we're not surprised and we all have the same information.
Speaking of 2019, didn't we approve a DC trip that I think had gotten postponed or something, or did it not even get off the rails because of COVID?
It didn't happen. And again, I think we need to, so it took us a bit of time to research minutes and to figure out even when it was. So we just didn't, a lot has happened and our staff, our administrators have been so busy that the last thing anybody's thinking of is that.
A trip.
So, it's a trip. And so there was no malintent on anyone's part. But the only message from me here is let's make sure we communicate and
don't be angry and let's try and keep our business in the boardroom and not on Facebook, but we all know that that happens as well. And I'm glad that the girls went and had a safe trip and that everyone's back. And hopefully we're gonna get our numbers under control that are not due to that. But hopefully we'll get our numbers under control and always improve our communication, doing the best we can. Matt?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I would like to say that I think that the time we're living in right now, not to be so hypersensitive, but I think it's absolutely absurd. I mean, we are responsible for teaching kids and making them, providing a safe environment.
We are.
Given what's going on right now, did it really make sense? Just a common sense perspective to support a trip to Florida that was absolutely not needed. So then we come back, they have people, they have issues. And now games that were actually scheduled for them to play here can't be played or they have to be rescheduled. It's just hard for me to understand or believe that people involved, as smart as they are, didn't think for 1 second that maybe the board or Pat should know what's going on.
And I can't answer that.
And I know, I'm just saying, I mean, what if something happened in Florida? What, heaven forbid, they get into an accident in a van.
Right.
They call Pat, well, Pat's like, we have students in Florida? Didn't know. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that people that made the decision that was a good idea to send our team to Florida didn't think it was a smart idea to brief anybody. So I'll just leave that there.
Thank
And I'm
you.
moving on.
Ken?
Well, I'm gonna take offense to that, because I don't think it was reckless to send a team to Florida. Because that trip was approved by the school board.
Pre-COVID, Chad.
Yeah, it was. But I'll just say, a local school district has 9 basketball players that are COVID positive that went nowhere.
Okay. If you think going to Hannaford is the same as going to Florida on a plane and being around in a state that's mask-free, it's not the same in my opinion. Well, okay,
You and I
we have a
disagree.
difference of opinion. It's not the same as going to Hannaford and Garden.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
If you want to come up and live the day, every day up at the high school, and
We
look what
can't.
we have for COVID positives up there, with people either not traveling or traveling, it doesn't matter. You can go to California, you can go to Fort Kent, you can go to Florida, you can go to Alaska, it doesn't matter. COVID is everywhere.
We can't control if a student goes to Florida goes to Hannaford with their parents. But as a board, we can certainly control a high school team that's sanctioned by the district or the school going to Florida to a basketball tournament to play 3 games. We can control that. I can't control a parent and their kid down to Hannaford, whether they're masked or they're not.
Hannaford
So,
has a mask policy.
so I would say, yes, that we've had a conversation and it is regretful that with everything going on, that it wasn't brought back, that, people, it wasn't malicious. That people with everything going on, it just kind of fell off the radar and didn't come back to the board. It didn't come to me. But it was not malicious in any sense. Absolutely, can communication improve so that these types of things come back to the board so that the board is aware and has the ability to say it's a different time from when we approved it before? Yeah, that is something administratively that we should work on, and it is partly why I wanted to make sure that you remembered about the trip that is happening in April. And people have different opinions clearly here. And I don't think we're going to change one another's opinions on this. I don't believe, as Chad said, that the explosion of COVID cases in our school was the result of that. No, we had an explosion due to lots of factors. That.
That's not what I'm saying either.
No, I'm just saying, that was, as we read the newspaper, that was the message that one could interpret from the article. And I don't believe that that was the case at all, so.
And Chad, it's not my intent to throw you under the bus. I hope you know that. I honestly feel that, however, if the board doesn't acknowledge it, because the board is responsible for anything that happens with our kids, even though it wasn't district money, we're responsible for the kids. That's the work that we do. So we just need to know and to be reminded. We knew in 2019, we didn't
And
know.
there were
last week.
fundraisers that were put in place and approved through the system for the trip.
And I know that as well, yeah.
Recently as this summer. So fundraising was ongoing throughout the year.
Yep.
And all of those fundraisers are approved. As
And I don't know that. I don't know if the fundraising doesn't come to this level. I think the fundraising goes through the superintendent's office, correct?
Absolutely, it does.
It goes through the superintendent's office. So I don't think, my only point is at the board level, we just weren't currently aware. And we just need to be currently aware when we're in a period of time like this. Just reminded, oh, by the way, don't forget, kids are going to Florida. And some of us might have said, hang on a moment, but just the communication piece is just really, really important.
And I'll just say one last thing, is that a common theme that we've talked about before is, at least several of us has said, is that this is here to stay and we need to move on with our lives. Hiding in our bedrooms and hiding in our houses is not something that we can do anymore. COVID is here to stay. It's just like the flu. I've heard that said several times, is that we need to move on with our lives and adapt to the current conditions. And I stand by what it was. Could we have done some things better? Absolutely. Looking back at it, 2020, was there any intent to hide it? No. I haven't hidden anything in the 24 years I've been in this district. It was something that was approved. It was postponed until this year. We went ongoing with fundraising efforts, and the trip was a success. The kids had a great time. The kids come down with COVID. Yep, they did. But I got a ton more kids up at the high school with COVID, and we've got other basketball teams in the area, hockey teams. We had to cancel boys basketball over the past 3 days because of COVID. None of those kids went anywhere. Winthrop has 9 cases. It's everywhere. Hockey team, we had to cancel over the break because we had a COVID situation. None of those kids went anywhere. So it is what it is.
Thank you, Chad. Superintendent's report.
So I just wanted to give you one update. Last time I gave you an update on school resource officers. I indicated that the city of Gardner, they were short, I think it was like 3 officers at the time. And so they had to pull back both the middle school SRO, and then ultimately they had to move back the high school SRO as well. But they were in hopes that we would have one of our SROs back as of January. Unfortunately, one of the SROs has actually resigned and left Gardner PD. So it's my understanding they are now short 4 officers. So as a result, we do not currently have an SRO available to our schools. Hopefully they will be able to fill those vacancies and we will have an SRO back. But at this time, I have no idea
Can
how
we
long
hire
it will
from
be.
the private sector? Could we do that?
There's training that goes with being an SRO, and it includes being an officer, a trained police officer. So No, I don't know of anyone that, or any school district that hires from a private company. So. But I understand that the city of Gardner is actively seeking to fill their ranks so that they're not short.
Right.
So hopefully they'll be able to do that in a timely manner. And they're certainly available to us during the day if we need them. So, yep. And that's it. That's it. So we have 3 executive sessions, and for the public, I am not expecting action out of any of those executive sessions. So I would say, Terry, you can eliminate the live streaming because we will not come back into the public to take any votes. Thank you all for being here.
Happy New Year.
So we need a motion to go in, and I need, before everyone starts going, do we want to take 5 minutes or?